Hello, everybody. Welcome to Martha. I hope you're feeling uncomfortably excited.
Always.
We've hugged already, so it can only go well, I think. We're going to talk for a few minutes. There's going to be some microphones roving very shortly, so please have your questions ready. And if you could wait for the microphone to come to you, because it's all being recorded. Now, Martha, you all know extremely well. Obviously, the UK's digital champion and a great pioneer of the internet in Britain. You've been digital champion for about 3 years now. And unusual in that you were appointed by a Labour government and kept on by the Conservative government. So a rare case of sort of someone who enjoys cross-party support.
Or maybe they just have no idea what I'm doing. Just carried on, no idea.
So I think we know what you do. We know what your aim is. Can you tell us, are you winning? Are you succeeding at the moment?
Always love #winning. There's kind of two elements, I guess, to what we've been up to. And one is more campaigny and one is more internally government focused. I'll just give a quick run through of both because they're quite different and they're kind of linked together, I believe, but they're interestingly different. So the first part is about encouraging millions more people in the UK on the internet. There are about still 8.5 million adults who've never used the internet, and no big surprises that they are also the most disadvantaged people and often older people. So obviously, having been given no resources, I launched a campaign to try and encourage organisations to do more or amplify what they're already doing to get people online. So that's the kind of external part. And I think it's going pretty well. It's hard because it's not often the top of people's agenda. It is kind of top of Google's agenda, but it's not top of every organisation's agenda. But we've done some quite interesting cross-sector partnerships. So we've managed to get, the BBC in a room with Mecca Bingo in a room with the post office. And you might think, well, how the hell's that going to go? But actually, it's great because the BBC can broadcast a message. The post office can help actually people get online through their network, and Mecca Bingo can point people when they're having a different kind of experience to say, oh, don't forget, you can do cool things online as well in an environment that they're kind of surprised by. So actually, one of the powers of what we've been doing is just convening unusual partnerships, I guess. But being ultimately a bit of a geek, the internal in government stuff is the stuff that I've really, really enjoyed, surprisingly. Don't tell anybody. Because the potential for change and restructuring the relationship between both citizen and government, but also how government operates within itself and to the external world is really extraordinary.
You recently launched something.
Yes, we did.
In this area, which people may not know about.
Yeah, we launched gov.uk. I did a report in 2010 that suggested government having 920 websites at a cost of around £500 million was perhaps not the most effective thing either for citizens or for government. And amazingly, they agreed with me. I think some of the people who created some of those 920 websites probably have death wishes on me, but we've survived so far. And the very simple idea behind my report was that actually one domain, maybe multiple front ends, but one central piece of technology that is absolutely and relentlessly focused on the end user would be a good place for government to start and a good way of thinking about how people use government services online. And because we're here in Google, I can reveal that pretty much the team at gov.uk, if you look at it, have copied a pretty well-known website. I have no idea what it might be, but it looks quite familiar to any of you sitting in this room because, surprise, surprise, there are a few companies that have invested on the best possible user experience. And so trying to take some of that knowledge and use it for the searching of government databases and ultimately transactional services is kind of exciting. Mm-hmm. But the prize is big because not only is it about us as citizens having much better quality services and much better quality of information, but it's also about making government fit for purpose for the next 100 years. And that is pretty important.
Now, the last time we met, we were in Liverpool.
We were.
And you were talking about getting particularly disadvantaged people online and small businesses online. And the take-up in Liverpool is kind of lagged behind the rest of the country. Here we are in fashionable central London with a whole lot of business people, presumably who are very tech-savvy and already are online. What can people in this room learn from your campaign? What should they be doing that they aren't doing?
There's, I guess, two things. There's the selfish thing, and then there's the hopefully maybe helpful thing. Everybody can help what we're trying to do. You know, I really deeply believe, and it wasn't true when I first took the job, that we have to give everybody the skills, all the skills possible, particularly now, in order to be as robust in weathering all of the various storms that are going around, not just economically, but in education, in health, in all of the different things. And digital skills are one of the most fundamental. So I think it is a matter of the absolute highest priority for all organisations to take very seriously skilling up both their communities, their employees, the universities that they touch. And it's not just about people who've never been online. It's also about people who feel scared with technology or who haven't really thought of themselves as digitally capable. Because I really strongly believe that we won't be able to face the challenges that the UK are going to face over the next 5 years. And yes, unless we are as skilled up as possible. And that is absolutely revolves around being digital. So every organisation can help us, certainly all the organisations in this room, by making small pledges or big pledges, by just looking around and thinking, well, actually, you know what, I know that the person on reception doesn't know how to get online, or maybe hasn't got the confidence to go and buy something on the internet or to look for an evening course online. So just have a chat and see whether or not there are people around you who've never used the internet. But also, just more broadly, being positive about the benefits of being online and being able to be robust about what an important role digital capability can play, I think, is all adds to the momentum and adds to the groundswell of support. We've had lots of pledges, you know, from all kinds of organisations, as I say, from companies, strange ones like Make a Bingo, big ones like Google, and then medium-sized ones who are all just thinking about what they can do to help get people online, building champions networks, producing low-cost products, creating an environment where people in their community can come and learn skills. So that's the kind of selfish reason to help me. But then just more broadly looking at your own organisation, I think that doing a kind of digital test on it is quite an interesting idea. You know, I started this crazy business, Lucky Voice. Has anyone in the room been to Lucky Voice?
Oh, yes.
Oh, my goodness, brilliant. Well, I don't need to explain it. It's like a rip-off of a Japanese karaoke business. You hire a private room, thank God, and you sing your heart out, very badly in my case. We've also got a big online service that people can use at home. And I mention it because I thought, well, what can Lucky Voice, what's Lucky Voice got to do in all of this stuff? But actually, when I was talking to the people that work in our bars, not all of them felt particularly comfortable in how to buy a PC or a laptop or how to make sure that things were safe that they were doing online. So actually, just looking internally, even in our little organisation, there are a whole bunch of issues that got thrown out that I think it was important to address. And I believe, again, that by addressing them, we'll have a better skilled workforce, we'll have a more robust business, and I think that will feed into a more profitable business over time.
We keep hearing that the UK is the e-commerce capital of the world, and we really are pretty advanced in all of this. So how do we compare in terms of the next stage with internationally? I mean, are you concerned that we're in danger of falling behind, that we're not taking full advantage of our privileged position?
I think it's a couple of things for me. You're absolutely right about e-commerce. I'd love to credit lastminute.com with it all, but I don't think that's the only reason. And there are lots of things that we do brilliantly. You know, we've got immensely competitive telecoms pricing. We have extraordinary, different offerings for people to be able to get access to equipment and infrastructure. But there are some areas we're just not very good. You know, we're not very good in quality of infrastructure very often. You know, our 2 meg speeds are often not 2 megs. All of the issues around broadband where we fail compared to how we should do relative to some of the other things we do well. And we don't have very good education and science. We were talking earlier about the science and technology and ICT in schools and young people going into technology. So that's quite a big issue, I'd have said, for us as a country. I look at something different, though. I look at, we've got around about 75% of people kind of online or able to use the web. But imagine what it would be if it was 99%. Rather than thinking, yeah, that's not bad. We kind of benchmark okay. It's not spectacular, but it's not bad. But imagine what happens when you think, well, that's not good enough. Imagine if it was like TV penetration, which it hopefully will be as connected TVs move more into the market. But if you could just assume that everybody was part of the same conversation, that there was no enormous gap in how people could consume things, the access to the savings that were available online, the access to education, employment opportunities. So I kind of throw it around the other way and say, because we're doing okay, let's really go for the big picture.
And what is your target? When is your job done? When we get to 99%?
I've thrown out the crazy title of task of 98, 99%. But in a way, I hope, as a kind of boisterous entrepreneur, it was always my decision that it's much, much better to aim for something kind of insane that makes people take notice, that's absolutely terrifying, that you have a loose chance of getting to, but not a very big one, because I think it throws the debate into a different place. So I've come up with quite a lot of flack recently. Oh, it's 2012, your campaign's ending this year, there's still millions of people not online. But I think we'll get further by having gone for that big goal, which I believe is true of everything, not just this challenge.
Great. Now, we're going to take some questions from the audience in a second. I was just going to ask you one more question. As a sort of very close watcher of the whole internet scene right from the very beginning, you also you know what's out there and what's hot. Can you point to some examples of people who are doing really innovative things in Britain with business online?
My favourite question. I think that I was reflecting this as I came here. You know, when we started lastminute.com, there was no Google in the UK, there was no Facebook, there was no social networking. You know, it's well played out, but it's sometimes startling to remember that the landscape has changed so fast. It's quite astonishing. And I think it's moved from a kind of broadcast model to this kind of amazing peer-to-peer type model. So lastminute.com, in a way, was quite like a broadcaster. You know, we said, come to our site, we will tell you what the best deals are, buy them. But now, even now, the site has to be syndicated out. It has to be much more based on referrals, on people talking to people. And I think the things that I like as small businesses are part of this trend that some of you may have heard of around collaborative consumption. You know, Rachel Botsman, a very smart lady from the US, came up with this notion that actually the next economy is going to be based much more on what people can do for each other and how they monetize that. And there are many, many examples, big and small, of interesting businesses, car sharing ideas. Or, you know, I found someone recently, I live in Marylebone, who if you're cooking a meal, you can cook an extra bit and they'll deliver it round. They'll cook an extra bit and deliver it round to your house, which if you're like me and the fridge is always empty is a good thing. Perfect.
I can take advantage of that.
Perfect. Yeah. So I like some of those small ideas. There's a site in the US called TaskRabbit where you can just put in what you want done and then you can get somebody to do it for you. And it always makes me laugh that the most requested thing is what? Does anybody know what the most requested thing on TaskRabbit might be? Any ideas? Not changing a light bulb, but it's kind of like that. Building IKEA furniture. Help, build me IKEA furniture. So I really like some of those small things, whether it's Zali or whether it's TaskRabbit or some of the collaborative consumption ideas.
Great. Okay. Who would like to ask Martha a question? Don't be shy. Gentleman over here.
Hello.
My question's about trying to get everybody using the internet. One of the biggest blockers, I believe, is that the CXO community in most businesses don't truly understand social media platforms, how to use them.
Yeah.
And therefore, what you find in a lot of big corporates is that they block internet during the day. So what would your guidance and counsel be to CXO community in regards to how you let your employees and colleagues use the internet during the day?
It's a really great question, and I realised that I come at it from a very funny viewpoint because I have always worked in technology companies and always started them. So it's always been different scale and size to working in an organisation of 10,000 people. But you know what? I kind of think people are trustworthy, and I kind of think you judge people on the work they do, not whether they're staring at Facebook all day. And as long as you set up the right parameters around what they're delivering and how they're working and then monitor that, that's the right thing to monitor rather than what they're doing at their desktop. So I don't think there should be restrictions, and I think there should just be a different way of looking at it. And actually, of course, it can help people in their work and it can be enormously beneficial. So I think you should trust people.
Next question. Gentleman here.
Government loves it when I say that. Open up all government systems to the internet. They really love that.
I'm Arthur Guy Phillipson from the Internet Advertising Bureau.
Hello.
You talked briefly about learning in schools,
Yes.
and my daughter did the technology course, which was rubbish, and did spreadsheets and so on.
Yes.
And Gove seems to be
Yes.
making a push to
Yes.
get that right. I'm also wondering whether that can be linked to getting those not online to do so via their kids, actually.
Yes, absolutely.
So if you get what I mean.
No, you're spot on. And one of the first projects I went to see in my crazy title, Good Job role, was a project under the Westway in West London where there were a group of people, probably only about 10 people, but the average age was about 87. And they had recently come online, and most of them had been shown by someone in their family, actually. Now they were going to learn more formally in this training centre. So we've worked a lot with different projects, both with schools opening up their equipment, but also there are lots of things happening all over the place, encouraging intergenerational learning. And one of my jobs is to just keep shouting about it. So there's a brilliant project called Finer Day, where a fabulous man called Howard, who's kind of maniacal about using kids to get into care homes and into difficult places where people could get massive benefit from being connected, either reducing isolation or building their confidence. And so he got lots of local scout groups to come and volunteer and help the people in the care homes to get online. And it's had phenomenal impact on both sides. So I completely agree with you. I think it is happening, but it could happen more, and it's a really great way to learn.
The ICT courses, being transformed. If you're working with government, the education department, ICT was the course that needs to be transformed.
It needs to be transformed. So many kids I met, well, not so many, but I have met kids who said to me, "Yeah, we learnt about computers at school. I never went online. I'd never been online, and I didn't know how to use the internet, having done an ICT course." I mean, but I think it is changing. I think it feels like Peter knows a lot about this too.
Gentleman here.
Hi.
Hi.
Interested in any observations from around the world in terms of smart stuff that you've observed that we could bring in?
That we could bring in? Well, that's a really tricky question. I think if I was looking at from a government point of view, for a start, I think that I would be really focusing on infrastructure. This is probably not a popular thing with some people, but building faster roads is good, but building much, much better infrastructure would be much, much more helpful to my mind. Making sure a 2 meg connection is really a 2 meg connection, and then making sure that everybody has a 20 meg connection as soon as possible. And I think that, the huge leaps that can be made in remote healthcare, the huge leaps that can be made in remote education and learning and working at home and all those things. So that's what I would focus on if I was government. And if you look at some of the countries that have managed to do that, then, it's early days, but still, they're in different places. So that would be one of the first things I'd say. In terms of individual businesses, there are hundreds of thousands. As I say, I love all the collaborative consumption stuff. The other stuff I'm absolutely brainwashed by. My boyfriend turns away when I start talking about it. Is 3D printing. I don't know how many of you have seen 3D printers, or maybe some of you work in that industry, but blimmin' heck, I am partly metal now, and that's why I need antifreeze in my ears at this time of year. And they would have printed out my bones again in another 2-3 years' time. And so it's quite humbling for me. It gives me kind of goosebumps. But also just now seeing what I believe might happen on the high street in a kind of revolution in manufacturing. Not big things, but small things. So I'm obsessed with 3D printing.
Another question? Any more? Lady here.
Hi. I'm working with some of the bankers at the moment, the likes of Lloyds and Barclays, and one of the big problems we have with the bankers, the people who make the decisions about giving the money to businesses who want to get online, is they don't understand the technology. They have a BlackBerry, it's locked down, they have no access to the internet, they think social media is something that happens to somebody else, they don't know what apps are. What are you doing to educate those bankers?
I am personally going to meet every individual banker. No. It's really funny, again, this is a bit indiscreet, but hell, I'm on the board of Marks and Spencer, and the average age of the board is slightly older than me. And when everybody started getting iPads, that was when people became really interested in technology. And I think it's kind of interesting because, to your point, in a way, an iPad isn't the same as being an understanding, being online. We have finally now got a digital board at M&S. So I recognise the problem. I'm happy to say that Lloyds is a really big partner of Race Online 2012. So they are taking the agenda seriously. It's taken a while to get there, but it's now one of our key partners for how we're going to morph into 2012. So we're trying through them to keep that education piece. But, in all seriousness, again, not trying to blow my own trumpet, but I've talked at 300 events in the last 2 years. So I am really trying to get out there and say exactly that message. And I hope that if I can amplify things and other people hear my message and then amplify it themselves, then that has a ripple effect. But we just need to keep making sure it's top of a priority list, and it's not easy.
How are we doing for time? Can you let me know? We're okay for a couple more questions. Any more? Gentleman over here, please.
Hi, Jason from Phones for You.
Hello.
I know that you're trying to promote connectedness and get as many people using and gaining access and skills with regards to digital media. But what's your opinion about actually, in some ways, restricting connectivity, particularly when it comes to children who have access to smartphones and the kind of content that they might be able to see? and also the implications of things such as cyberbullying through social networks via the web and also phones as well.
Yes, and yesterday was Safer Internet Day, so I had the pleasure of going to Parliament with 27-year-olds who were completely fantastic and were talking to an audience and some ministers about their experiences of being online. So we were discussing a lot of the issues you've just described. I think it's obviously fundamental, and it comes back to me about education and the role that we as grown-ups have in showing children how to be safe online and how to make sure that they understand about the questions around identity and who might be looking at things and how to get to places that are safe and not safe. But you know what? They were amazingly savvy, these little guys, and not savvy in a scary way, just smart. And I think we underestimate the younger generation. I think sometimes we project our own fears and some of the things that we're up against. You know, they looked at me as though I had dropped from another planet when I said online, offline. What are you talking about, online, offline? That doesn't make any sense. And it wasn't even that they thought they were online all the time. It was just the notion that you somehow made a conscious decision like that. So I think we have to recognise the world is different for them, have to work with them and through them and use them, and make sure that there are some very simple pointers and educational tools to use. One of the pieces of work that I really respect was a woman called Tanya Byron, who I'm sure many of you know. She did some work for the previous government just on this whole issue of how to help children online. And she just said, you know, it's like learning how to cross the road or to jump into a pool and swim. You don't just push your child, you teach them, and some very simple things that you can do to teach them safely. So I agree with you, it's really important. I think it's not impossible, and I don't think we should be frightened of it.
Do you think we should regulate social networks?
I don't think we should regulate them, no. I think that there are tools out there that can give you parental control over those things, and I don't think they should be regulated, no.
There's a gentleman here.
Hi, Martha.
Hello.
Keith Revel from Electrocomponents. We hear a lot of coverage in the media about the negative effect that the internet's having on the high street.
Yes.
What's your view on how we can turn that on its head and get digital helping the high street?
I like that question, and funnily enough, I was at a board away day for the last 2 days of last week, and that was one of the big questions, as you would imagine, for Marks and Spencer. And particularly, I was arguing for us because we're one of the bellwethers of the high street, and I think we have more of a responsibility than many organisations to make sure the high street is strong. And I'm not joking when I say that I think some of the changes in technology are really have the potential to rebuild the high street. You know, taking 3D printing. It's not insane to imagine a time when you go to a place to print out some small parts for your game or for your doll or for even your washing machine if you can fit the washer yourself. And so there are ways, I think, that the hybrids of technology could reinvigorate your reasons to go online your reasons to go into the high street. I also think that there are lots of smart models that I've been reading about in the US recently. I read that there was a startup store, and a whole bunch of small dot-coms and other startups had taken over retail space and were just showcasing stuff. So it wasn't quite a pop-up shop, it wasn't quite a flash sale, but they had taken over some space and they were just showing some ideas and getting a feel for whether or not customers like them. So some bolder ideas about how we embed technology rather than being frightened of it. You know, all of the numbers show that I've seen. Of course, you know, the impact is still too early to tell. But, you know, Marks & Spencer benefits from people buying things online. You know, people are more likely to go into a store and spend more if they've bought stuff online. And similarly, if they've been in store and then they go online, they'll spend more money online. There is that kind of symbiotic relationship. And I just think we're not being necessarily very bold or brave in thinking about some of those hybrid models and some of the ways that we could create opportunities for people to go to the high street. And I don't know about you, but I bloody hate huge shopping centres. Why do you want to go there? Much nicer to think about reasons to go to your local high street, pick up things you've ordered online, or go and have a different kind of experience, go and play a crazy virtual reality game, go and look at a 3D movie, whatever the thing is. Do you agree?
Absolutely, yeah, I think, yeah, for sure.
Good.
I couldn't have put it better myself. No.
Okay,
Great.
Time for a couple more, just quickly. Lady in the front there.
Hi, Martha. Erica Schmidt from Aegis Media. Just curious to get your perspective on the EU Privacy Directive, which obviously is coming into play not long from now. And there's also potential legislation coming in next year. And there's 2 points of view. Obviously, there's a consumer point of view and making sure that choices and what they're aware of in terms of how their behavior is being tracked or identified, as well as the business impact for us in the media industry, obviously, publishers, etc.
Yeah. It's really complex, and I'm certainly not an expert on EU regulation, but I know that if we had had some of this legislation when we've been starting lastminute.com, we'd have been in big trouble. And so there's a really fine line between making sure people, have protection and making sure businesses can survive. So I think I sit in quite a negative place about it, but I think it's, as I understand it, you may know more, it's still being pretty worked on, and I have respect for some of the people that are working on it, so hopefully some of these issues will be played out. But it's complex.
Okay, last question, please. Any takers? In the absence of any particular, I'm going to ask you a question.
Okay. I was talking about sick, but no.
maybe 100 years ago, we might have talked about the electricity economy and the difference that the electricity could make. And there might have even been an electricity champion at that point. But yes. And here we are talking about the internet economy. But presumably in the future, we will no more talk about the internet economy than we talk today about the electricity economy. When do you think that might be?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's happening. It's just, it seems kind of bifurcated to me. So there are some businesses that, look and feel completely web-enabled, and there are some that really don't. So it's as though there's the kind of massively speeding up sectors, and then there are some that aren't kind of stuck. And it's when those two come closer together that obviously it will be really, truly different. I would say that within 5 years things will feel very, very different again, because I just think the pace of technology change around devices alone, I think when people can be online via their TVs without even really realising it, that's a big blooming deal. And that's a big deal for businesses as much as it is for consumers. So the kind of infrastructure changes combined with, the enormous benefits that all businesses now realise they get by being online and reaching new consumers, just going to speed up that change.
Martha and Fox, thank you very much indeed.
Pleasure.